Hey everyone, welcome to my birth story video. This is a little bit different to other birth story videos you can find on here. This one involves a medically complex birth of my son, Roman, who had a congenital heart defect. We found out about the heart defect prior to birth, so everything was very planned and organized in order to help and make sure that his birth was as safe as possible because of his heart. When I first found out about his heart condition, one of my first thoughts was, what's birth going to look like for us now? I think everyone likes to have an idea in their head of what the birth of their first child will be like. And I was worried that I would end up with a cesarean section because of his heart and other things. And I could not find any other videos on here that mentioned what their birth was like with a medically complex baby. So I'm going to share my story today in the hope that it helps someone, or if you're just interested. I think it's important to talk about this because so many times you just hear of these like beautiful birth stories and, you know, all the freedom, and that we didn't get that. Ours was, not what I would have hoped my birth story. So I'm going to talk about that today. Usually when you have a congenital heart defect, or when the baby has a congenital heart defect, it depends on the particular defect. Some defects are going to make it more challenging in utero, so when the baby's in your stomach, and others are not going to affect the baby at all until they're out and breathing on their own. That was our case. Roman's heart and everything was functioning fine when he was in my tummy, so that meant that our labour could be natural. It just meant that they would like to induce the labour so that he was born at a time where the hospital was ready. Basically, there was a bed in the NICU and the cardiologists were there, and you know, it was well staffed. It wasn't on a weekend or something like that. So I was allowed to try for a vaginal delivery, but I had to be induced. I know sometimes they like to just automatically do a scheduled C-section depending on the condition, but most of the time they do prefer you to have a vaginal birth because it is less stressful for the baby. And it's better for your recovery when you've got a sick child. So that was kind of what was told to us, and I was really hoping that we would be able to have a vaginal delivery. So I will start by saying at 36 weeks, I had to relocate an hour away from home because we did have to have our son at a specialist hospital. That is one thing that is very, it will definitely happen if you have a congenital heart defect baby. You will have to relocate to the hospital that is nearest to you, equipped to deal with that. So for some people, it means getting on a plane and going to that hospital. Luckily for us, the hospital is only an hour away from home, which is not too bad. It was still obviously very isolating having to go there at 36 weeks because I think normally at 36 weeks you get to stay home and you start your maternity leave and you get to nest and prepare for your baby and, enjoy those last few weeks of your pregnancy. That was very not the case for us. My partner was still working, so he was traveling an hour to and fro work every day, and I was just stuck in Ronald McDonald House, which is a charity organisation that basically provides accommodation for families that have this situation where they have to relocate away from their home. It's a wonderful foundation. We're incredibly grateful for it. It's just across the road from my hospital, but it's also, not super equipped for a full-term pregnancy. It was uncomfortable. And I couldn't do anything, and it was quite, a very lonely time for me. It wasn't a normal, exciting time. We're about to have a baby. So that was the first thing. I was due for my induction when I was 39 weeks. So that was on a Monday. So we were due to go to the hospital at about 4 p.m. on the Monday, and the plan was that night they were going to put a balloon up into my cervix, which is basically like a tubing that goes up into your cervix, and then they inflate it with water, and the pressure of that balloon inflated with water sits on your cervix and helps your body dilate. So that was the plan, and they were going to do that and then break my waters once I was at 2 centimeters dilated, and then hook me up to the drip, which increases your contractions, and we were going to have a baby. Of course, it did not go that way. So Monday I went into hospital for my induction, and they had to push me back because they had an emergency in the NICU, which obviously we were totally fine with, but it was incredibly disheartening when I had just been waiting for this day, like for 4 weeks. I'd been sitting in this Ronald McDonald House. Time was going so slow. I was so ready to get on with the process. We didn't have any you know, real answers of what our future looked like with our son, because our plan was to wait until he was born to have a proper echo done. They'd done echoes before and they'd given us quite a grim prognosis. So we were looking at palliative care. However, we wanted this echo done to confirm everything afterwards. So we couldn't even plan anything, and I just wanted to have my baby, you know. So anyway, we got pushed back. So I ended up just staying a night in the hospital. Nothing really happened. I got very broken sleep. Obviously, sleeping in a hospital when you're full-term pregnant is not ideal. And yeah, just, you know, it is what it is. The whole next day happened. So now we're at the Tuesday. The whole next day, same thing, you know, just trying to get some rest. They were just monitoring me and things like that. And then Tuesday night, the plan was to get the balloon in. So they took me around to the procedure room to get the balloon in at about 6 p.m. I'm going to go with 4 people try and get this balloon into my cervix, and no one had any luck. It became incredibly traumatic by the end of it, like the pain and everything, and just having everyone up in there. I was just at the point where I was like, who's next? Like, you know, is someone going to have a try? No one could get it in because apparently my cervix was like tilted to the back, so they just couldn't get the balloon in. They said at that point I was already half a centimeter dilated, which is pretty normal when you're full term. And I'd had a lot of like early labor symptoms, so I felt like my body was kind of getting ready to go into labor, but obviously it needed to be pushed along. So they couldn't get this balloon into my cervix, so basically they had to wait and run it by the head honcho doctor, because they don't like putting Prostin gel, which is the second option for induction, into first-time mums. I think it is like it causes too much stress on the baby and things like that. So they were like, oh, just go back to your room and rest. We're going to just find out if we can put this gel into you. And I'm thinking like, well, what else are we going to do? Like, if you can't get the balloon in, what, you're just going to take me straight down for a C-section? Like, obviously I prefer to try the gel first. So I just waited and waited, and obviously I was going to get no sleep. And by 2 a.m. in the morning, a midwife came in and said, okay, we're going to put this gel in. Now, keep in mind, I'm just on a maternity ward at this point. It's not a labor, you know, birth suite. You don't have your baby here. It's just like where you're monitored and stuff before going into labor. They're not super equipped for labor and things. So one of the midwives in the birth suite actually came up to put that gel in. I got that in at 2 a.m. and for about 2 hours, I felt fine. I was getting some mild cramping. Me and my partner were just trying to watch TV and just like take my mind off things and everything. But by about 4 a.m., so 2 hours after the gel was in, my pain was definitely noticeable. It was definitely there. I was just trying to like, you know, take my mind off things and just try and like not pay attention to it. I was just having showers to just kind of like the back was really painful. So get some water on my back and things, and I let my partner have a rest. I know, I'm a nice girlfriend. It was just because I knew that once the pain amped up, I'd really need his support and I need him to be 100%. And then also after our son was born, the plan was for him to go to the NICU and my partner was going to go with him and basically be the sole parent while I was still recovering from labor. So I knew that he needed to get rest just as much as me. But once we got to about, I'm going to go with 6 a.m., my pain was definitely there, and I was like, I think I need to wake him up. Like, this is getting quite painful. So I woke him up, and then at 6 a.m. they put another dose of gel into my cervix. At this point, I had pain now for about 2 hours, and we were just trying to, like, you know, work through that. I couldn't eat or anything because I was just too focused on the pain. And then at about 11 a.m., they took me down to the birth suite. So the plan was hopefully I would be 2 centimeters dilated by then, which means they could break my waters, which would obviously kickstart the whole thing and put me into active labor. So I went down to the birth suite, and unfortunately, I had only dilated to 1. So I had dilated maybe half a centimeter, if that, the whole night of having this gel in. So they couldn't break my waters. It was really disheartening because I was like, well, why am I in pain? Like, if nothing's working, you know. I started like walking around the hallways and everything to try and like, you know, help my body dilate. And it was just getting like really, really painful. So they said I'm going to have to go back up to the maternity ward where I was. And then I would just have to wait a bit longer and hope that my body started to dilate so they could break my waters. They did give me a sterile water injection in my back because a lot of my pain was in my back. And I was a bit skeptical of taking like strong painkillers at this point because in the past when I've had strong painkillers, they've made me feel like really sick and I just didn't want to be vomiting through my labor. So I was like, oh, look, I'll try this sterile water injection first. And my midwife was like, be aware that I do have women scream when they get this injection. And I was like, oh yeah, like my pain threshold's not too bad. Like I'm not going to scream at you. Oh my God. This sterile water injection, I don't even know what it is, but it stings so bad, like excruciating. I screamed and I was like grabbing onto my partner like so tight. It's like I've never done that before. So anyway, apparently what happens is the water injection goes into your back and actually blocks the nerve pathways in your back that are causing all that pain. And yeah, just basically blocks the pain in a way, like doesn't fully take it away, but takes the edge off. So that did happen for me, but only for about 20 minutes. And honestly, the pain of getting the injection, I don't think it's worth it. Like I didn't get another one after that. It kind of took the edge off for about 20 minutes, but it was so painful to get it that, you know, it just wasn't worth it. So anyway, they took me back up to the maternity ward and just tried to say try to get some rest, have something to eat. I couldn't do either of those things. I was boiling hot, having all these hot flushes. So finally they made the room nice for me. They brought in a fan and things like that, which just helped. I think it's so much about your environment when you're in labor. And I was just in this dark room, and it's totally not the hospital was beautiful. It's not their fault, but just how it was all set out wasn't helping me. I couldn't have a birth ball in there and things. So it just kind of was really affecting my mental state as well, I feel. So just the fact that I wasn't dilating and I was in pain and I couldn't sleep and I couldn't eat and I just, it was just really hard. Plus everything going on, knowing his heart condition and all of that. So yeah, I went back up to the ward, hoped to dilate a little bit, and then at about 5 p.m. they took me back down to the birth suite. And so this was the second time we'd been down today, and the plan was hopefully, fingers crossed, I'd be 2 centimeters and they could break my waters. So we go down and pain's, still there, very much so, and someone checks me and I'm still 1 centimeter. And at that point I was just like, what do I do? I've been in labor all day. I haven't progressed at all. I'm mentally and physically drained. I hadn't been sleeping. What do I do from here, And I just got very disheartened. And they told me, look, we're going to get one more doctor in to try and break your waters. But if they can't do it, it's looking like a C-section because we can't have you in labor all day and not progressing. Obviously that's bad for your baby and everything else. And I was like, yeah, look, I'm open to it. My birth plan going into this was whatever gets him here the safest is what we'll do. So I was very open to anything, that could have gone wrong throughout the whole process. So by some miracle, this lovely doctor came in, and she was quite a junior doctor as well. So she's like, oh, I'm the intern, I'm going to try to break your waters. And I was like, okay, well, if senior doctors can't do it, then, give it a crack. But I didn't have much hope. Anyway, by some, miracle, she broke them. So I looked at Perry and I just saw his face change. And I was like, what is it? And he's like, your waters, they broke. And I didn't even feel anything. I didn't even notice. She's like, yeah, I got them. Anyway, so happy days. That was the best thing in my labor because it just really kickstarted everything. So I pretty much, once my waters were broken, I got off the bed and I was like, okay, I'm going to start moving around. This is, going to get things flowing. I was on the ball and stuff. My pain was, it took a whole nother level. As soon as my waters were gone, it just went up a notch. And I was in the shower and I was trying to, move through all the pain. And unfortunately, I didn't have the best midwife at this point. She just wasn't very involved in labor. She was kind of sitting on the computer typing, which is totally fine. You got to do what you got to do. But at this point, I feel I just really needed someone to encourage me because I'd been in labor all day and, it was very disheartening not progressing. And I just really needed someone to be you can do this, your partner is obviously great, but there's only so much they can do. And I feel it's good to come from another source as well. And she just, wasn't really helping. She wasn't really giving me pain relief options and stuff like that. So she also was just very focused on getting me to put a gown on and get the heart monitor on and get the IV drip in and all of that. And I just in the middle of contractions, I was just everyone get off me. I don't want to, I just wanted to get rid of everything. And yeah, it was hard. So after about an hour of that, an hour and a half, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to need the epidural because Like, if it's like anything all day, I'm not going to progress quickly. I'm in all of this pain. I'm mentally, physically drained. My head is not in it. Like, I need a rest, and I've got to obviously make some pretty big decisions once he's out and go to the NICU and all of that. So this, I've just written down my times on here because, like, there's a lot to remember. I don't even know if I'm remembering all correctly. But yeah, 5 p.m. when I went back to the birth suite, waters broke at 6 p.m. and then 7 p.m. I got the epidural. So by about 7:45, I was set up. I was feeling $1,000,000 after the epidural. I was finally getting some rest. I was just relaxing in bed. The midwife swapped over for the night shift. We made the bedroom really, really nice and just relaxing. Like, I had the diffuser on and the music on, and we dimmed the lights, and Perry started to have a bit of a rest. And honestly, the epidural was the best thing I could have done in that scenario. So I'd had the epidural in from about 7:30, and then at 11 p.m. I started to feel this pressure, and I was like, surely from 7 to 11, like, I haven't progressed that quickly. If I hadn't progressed all bloody day, like, I'm not going to be ready to push baby out right now, surely. And I thought it was just the catheter. I thought that maybe the balloon in the catheter was making the pressure or something like that. So I said to the midwife, like, can you just check the catheter? I feel like I don't know, something's going on. So she checked me, and she actually checked my cervix, and she's like, oh, the reason you're feeling the pressure is you're actually 9 centimeters. And I was like, what? Like, I feel like I just got this epidural in. So it was kind of bittersweet because I was like, oh, I was just starting to relax and maybe get some rest, and now we're pushing a baby out. But it's amazing what you can do when you, like, are in that moment, you know. Just happens. So we got everything ready to push. I had to wake Perry up, and the midwife's like, look, normally the average pushing time is about 2 hours, so I just want you to keep trying to relax, try not to push. Your body will just naturally bring him down so that you don't have to push for, like, longer than 2 hours. So I was like, yeah, okay, no worries. She's like, I'm going to go on my break, and yeah, just try to get a little bit more rest. So I was like, all right. So she went on a break, and my pressure to push was just getting worse and worse and worse. And I was like, Perry, I feel like I need to, like, call the nurse because I feel like I need to push. And he's like, no, like, you're all good. And I was like, no, seriously, like, we can't have a baby that's got a heart condition born without medical assistance. Like, just to be safe, I'm going to call the nurse back. So we called a nurse in, and she checked me, and she was like, oh yeah, his head is right there. So my midwife came back from break, and she had to call the NICU, and, like, a resus team came down, and there's actually, like, a little room just off the side from our room where the NICU team could all wait. So that was really nice because I thought going into this that I would have, like, every man and their dog in the room with me as I was pushing him out because of his heart. But all I had in there was a midwife, a NICU nurse, and then my partner. So it was really intimate, which I was really happy about. So if you're in this scenario, like, as long as you and the baby are all okay, like, you probably won't need heaps of people in there. You can still make it a nice experience. So yeah, they got everyone ready and got everyone in position. And then by now it was about midnight. About midnight, I think. So I was like, okay, let's do a practice push. And I did a practice push, and he nearly came out. So they were, all right, yep, let's go. Got everyone into position, and I pushed him out in about 3 pushes, which was great. I honestly loved the pushing. They put a mirror up so I could see everything, each their own. I found it incredibly motivating, and just, like, I'm fascinated by this whole process. So I was, yes, stoked to be able to see it. And my partner actually got to kind of pull him out and put him up on my chest and then cut his cord. And he got to stay on my chest for about 2 minutes. I was in shock, and I was kind of too worried about him to really enjoy that moment. Like, I was just worried about how his heart was going to cope with transitioning to the open world. So I just couldn't really enjoy that moment, and it was really, really fast. So I don't think it would have made any difference to me if I got to, like, put him on my chest or not. But as soon as that 2 minutes was up, they took him next door into the resus room just to, like, check him over, make sure he was still breathing okay and everything like that. And then a beautiful nurse came in and told me, like, his weight and his height and all of that kind of stuff, and that he wasn't on any breathing support. So then they packed him up and my partner, and they went to the NICU, and I stayed back in the room by myself and, you know, got stitched up and checked out and all of that. I ended up with a 2nd-degree tear, which was not too bad considering, like, I pushed him out so fast, and it was a first time birth. So I was happy with that. I obviously wanted as minimal trauma as possible so that I could get up and be in the NICU and all of that. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. He went to the NICU and they wheeled me through the NICU to see him. I was still obviously had the epidural in my system, so I just had to go on the bed, and I got to like hold him for a little bit in the NICU, which was lovely. And then I went back up to my recovery room, and the nurse up there, the midwife, helped me express colostrum without a baby. Yeah, and that was pretty much it. I had no side effects from the epidural. I had about 3 hours sleep after that, and then got up, had a shower, and went down to the NICU. Like, I was totally fine from that. And I probably stayed in hospital till about Sunday. So Roman was born on Thursday morning, and I stayed till Sunday. I feel like I could have gone home earlier, but because he was still in their NICU, like, they were so beautiful and accommodating to let me stay, and I was still needing, like, you know, just blood pressure checks and pain relief and all that sort of stuff. So it made it really convenient in the first few days, like recovering from birth and just having my room there and his room like just down the hall. I think it was on like the level underneath us. So all in all, my labour and delivery birth experience was really nice considering his heart condition. I was expecting it to be worse than that, but it ended up being like relatively normal to a normal induction. I think obviously a natural birth versus an induction are very different, because in an induction your body is not ready, and obviously everything progresses slower and things like that. But other than that, it was a really nice experience, and I am happy with it now because I can look back on it as a fond memory. There's obviously a lot I would do differently with future kids, but in this case, like, Roman was kept as safe as possible. So I think the only things different were the fact I had an induction, the fact I had to have 24/7 monitoring of him and his heart with those bands on. And that was it. Obviously, a few specialist reviews throughout the labour and whatnot, and the fact that he had to go to NICU afterwards. So hopefully you guys enjoyed hearing about my birth experience with a medically complex baby. Hopefully it helps you if you are also in the situation where you are going to birth a medically complex baby with a heart condition. And yeah, that's all. Thanks so much for watching.